Yeah, Priest is getting some cards in Whizbang's workshop. Remember Temperus? Well, this is him now, and this is not the last of the crazy cards we're going to see. This is Timewinder Zarimi, a new 5-mana 4/6 dragon. Battlecry once per game. If you've summoned 5 other dragons, take an extra turn. So Time Warp from the Unguro Mage Quest is back in the form of a nice little dragon for Priest. And all you have to do to activate this is just play 5 other dragons, which I don't think is asking much. You don't even have to be a full-on dragon priest necessarily. Maybe run like a package of 8 to 10 dragons. We're going to see some kind of supporting cards as well in this video to help you like find those and get those down quickly. And boom, you've got Zarimi here as a win condition. Anytime you stick a little bit of a board or can play some threats down alongside Zarimi, this becomes a win condition of sorts. Pair this with, I think even like Alexstrasza, the OG Alexstrasza's back, so that could like push people down to 15. Play this and a few minions, get yourself 10, 12 damage that can attack next turn alongside some follow-up damage from hand or whatever. And you've got a lot of potential here to just end the game, or sometimes just swing the game too if you're desperate. You need to stabilize, you need a turn to like heal up or generate some value. This can do that as well. So providing a win condition for Priest, a potential stabilizer for Priest, this is just a very valuable tool. I mean, an entire extra turn for only 5 mana. And I mean, yes, conditionality, but I don't think it's crazy conditionality. Like, no, it's probably not going to be happening on turn 5 usually, but turn 6, turn 7, turn 8, probably more like turn 7, turn 8 based on some of the cards we're going to see. I think that's going to be happening fairly often. And you'll have plenty of other cards in your deck to help utilize this too. So will this always turn into lethals? I don't think so right now. It's going to be hard to maybe get enough damage out alongside it. Certainly, not 30. But if your opponent has been softened up at all, yes, it becomes a lethal consideration all the time. Like the opponent has to think about it constantly, change how they play around this. And I think, like I said before, it can be a stabilizer as well. So, I mean, we just know how powerful extra turns can be, right? It can be scary, crazy, powerful sort of stuff. Now, the once per game tag is helping a lot, so there's no shenanigans on this. You're not repeating this multiple times, you're doing craziness with it, but I don't think you need to necessarily. Like, of course, that would help. That would make it even more absurd, but I think once per game is going to make this card feel sufficiently powerful. It may not, break the meta, it may not break the game, which is good news. We don't want that, but I think it will feel very, very good. And I think it'll be played in a lot of pre stacks. I think a little dragon package will not be a big sacrifice. And this card just gets run a ton and decides games really often. So talking about some of the dragon support here, we've got Scale Replica. This is a 2-mana spell. Draw your lowest and highest cost dragon. So, I mean, if you build your deck for it, this could be your highest cost dragon. This could be a way to basically tutor your Zarimi. I don't think you're going to do that because you probably want to run Alexstrasza. There's also going to be a new big dragon here, the Clay Matriarch, that's already higher cost than Zarimi. So, I think you're probably going to want to run other stuff, but theoretically you could use this as a tutor. More importantly, perhaps it's just dragon bodies in hand, which you're going to need to make sure your Zarimi goes off. So having a card like this that already gets you 2 of your dragons, and then actually the Clay Matriarch here, if you look closely, this is actually 4 of your dragons, because this is a dragon that summons a dragon on Death Rattle, and then the mini does the same thing, a dragon that summons a dragon. So there you go. 1 draw turns into 4 dragons for Zarimi. And your job is basically done right there, and you're still going to want other stuff as well. But this is just incredibly efficient tutor-based card draw for 2 mana. I mean, this looks very, very good at both kind of filling in a curve sometimes, also finding key threats and key targets too. So speaking of the Clay Matriarch, this is a 6 mana 3/7 miniaturize with Taunt, and Death Rattle summon a 4/4 whelp with Elusive. Elusive, remember, is the new keyword version of can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. And then of course the mini version here is a 1/1 that does the exact same thing. And this is definitely a big old pile of dragons. I don't think this feels like the most efficient 6 mana play in its own right. A 3/7 taunt. I mean, I like that it has taunt. I like that it's defensive. It is going to interrupt people a little bit. Priest has kind of gotten away with playing some of these just body-based 6 mana taunts in the past. Sometimes they have like AoEs and stuff or heals, bundled in with them. So maybe they can get by with this again. And, you know, the body on board is kind of annoying for opponents to deal with. That's the kind of thing that if left behind, you know, just takes some great trades, maybe plays into Zarimi as an extra body on board to help you secure lethals on the back of that extra turn, right? And then the 1-mana version of this, totally fine, right? Just throw this down. It's going to get cleaned up, and you're going to get a nice little body off that and get some minions summoned. Do keep in mind specifically too for Zarimi, it is summon 5 other dragons, not play. So I kind of hinted at this, but the death rattle here will count towards Zarimi and add up. So I don't think this is like the strongest piece of the package at all. I could actually eventually see this getting cut if you had enough dragons, but definitely for now, when the dragon pool's going to be fairly limited, this does feel like kind of tool that you need for Zarimi. So we also here have Fly Off the Shelves, great name, 4-mana spell, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions, repeat for each dragon that you're holding. So of course, you know, this is drawing you a couple. You probably got stuff like a Zarimi or a Clay Matriarch sitting in hand through the mid game. You know, that's easily going to give this, you know, +2, +3, sometimes even more damage without really requiring, again, a ton of work, which I think makes this a pretty effective mid-game board clear. I could see this cleaning up a bunch of 3 health boards, 4 health boards, even slightly bigger than that, as well as you're kind of accruing resources as a slightly slower priest build. This is the thing that gives you the time and gives you the windows to sort of play out your dragons more safely. You know, stabilize a little bit with this on turn 4 and turn 5, play the Clay Matriarch without too much risk on turn 6. That sort of thing lines up rather nicely, I think. So this becomes, again, a rather effective little tool for a dragon priest. So that wraps it up for the dragon side of this package. Let's talk about the other side of this package, which is that Raza is back. This is a 5-mana 5/5 battle cry. For the rest of the game, your hero power refreshes whenever you play a card, which you'll remember fondly, not so fondly, is the effect on the old Shadow Reaper Anduin Death Knight card, which it's been so long, it's been, what, 7 years ago. Some of you may not have even been around for that. Maybe I should pull this up real quick. Shadow Reaper Anduin with Void Form, deal 2 damage after you play a card, refresh this. And the old school version of Raza that was paired with this would make your hero power cost 0 for the rest of the game. So you'd have this machine gun, basically. Anytime you played a card, you could weave in a 2 damage hero power, and that was an insane win condition, and the deck was super crazy strong and very, very good. And that was definitive in the meta for a very long time. So Raza kind of gets you halfway towards that. The question then becomes, hey, where am I getting the damage out of my hero power? And it's a little bit tougher question to answer right now because Benedictus rotated out or will be rotating out of standard format this year. So there's no Benedictus where you can start your game with a Shadow Form hero power, and Shadow Form is also not going to be in the core set. So to get a damage-based hero power, what you're going to have to actually rely on is another 8-mana hero card, which is the Reno. Of course, the neutral Reno. Sorry, I'm trying to pull all this stuff up so I can pull it on screen. So if I look distracted, that's why. Reno Lone Ranger, of course, right? You have stuff like Arcane Bullet, which that costs 2 and refreshes 2. And these swap each turn, not each use, according to their wording. I'm assuming that's indeed how it'll work. So yeah, if you get the Reno Arcane Bullet and you get a Raza down, as long as you have cards and can generate cards to keep refreshing it, it's just game over, right? So that kind of recreates the old Shadow Reaper Anduin. And do note the rest of these hero powers are also pretty cool. And we have another card, the Papercraft Angel, which while on board serves as that Raza that makes your hero power cost 0. So basically play Reno at some point, play Raza at some point. Then if you can get a Papercraft Angel down at any point for 3 mana, you've got 7 mana to try to blow people up with a Reno hero power of your choosing. Arcane Bullet can kind of do it on its own and go infinite, but frankly a lot of these are also kind of crazy, you know, like Holy Bullet just buffing a board a bunch, you know, getting spells discovered off Nature Bullet could allow you to find more really cheap spells to cycle, right? Shadow Bullet summoning you a board, Fell Bullet drawing you a bunch of cards, Fire Bullet wiping out your opponent's board, get a bunch of armor off the Frost Bullet, right? You can start doing some pretty crazy things basically with this little setup. And I mean, yes, it's a few cards, and yes, you know, you have to be a Reno deck for the Reno, or at least probably want to. Could do it other ways, of course, for all your cards first. But I actually don't think that's too much to ask. I don't think it's crazy to sort all this out. If Priest has tons of survivability, typically they can get into a stage of a game where this does become an end game win condition. And we're going to see some ways to generate like 0 cost cards as well that can support this. So I don't know, man. Maybe it doesn't come together quite as cleanly as the old school Shadow Reaper Anduin stuff. And Hearthstone is definitely a different game than it was in that era as well. But to me, between these two cards, Raza and the Papercraft Angel, there's something kind of scary and crazy here. I also think there is potentially some upside on the base Priest hero power as well, with things like Overheal. You know, we're going to see this card, the Careless Crafter, which gives you these 3 health bandages, which could refresh your hero power. I don't think that's likely to be as good. I think you need end game potential, but you know, something to keep in mind at the very least. Bonus heals, bonus hero powers doesn't necessarily hurt. So I don't know, man. This package actually looks kind of nuts to me. To follow up on the Papercraft Angel, I mean, this is probably not a card you necessarily want to play on turn 3 most of the time. If you're doing you know, Reno stuff, you're going to be saving this for later. But this is a pretty solid looking 3-drop at 5 health that enables a hero power that can actually be great in an Overheal deck, making sure you have that extra hero power on turn 3 while still developing a nice little sizable body in a deck that does care about bodies on board and tempo for buff targets and stuff. So don't sleep on the Papercraft Angel as having a secondary route of play here via Overheal decks. There's something kind of cool here because they made this so big. So next up here we have the Careless Crafter, new 3 mana 3/3. Death Rattle, get 2 0-cost bandages. It restore 3 health, and I like this. I think this is actually a pretty nice little pile of stuff for Priest. Number 1, we talked about the Reno enabling here off the 0-cost cards. That could actually be really nice. There's actually even the Shadow Touched Cavaldier. You know, like this is sort of insane if you weave it in with Reno and 0-cost cards that are suddenly dealing damage instead of healing. Like you could use this for a bonus 3 damage on the opponent's face. That's 0 cost, 1 cost. Now this does just affect, you know, 1 card, but still that's just, you know, a pile of hero powers activating basically all at once. That could be part of the kind of follow-up for Reno deck. Also, we talked about Overheal. This is actually really nice little Overheal enablers as well. It does, you know, require the Death Rattle to go off, so they might be delayed, or this could be a little bit slow into the board for a deck that needs more tempo if you're not getting these bandages till turn 4. But I don't know, this just does a lot, man. It's a lot of numbers. Heal 6, frankly, on its own isn't bad. Sometimes Priest just values a bunch of healing to their face, and this could be a card you throw down early to generate some resources and bank some healing for future in the game. So I think this card actually does quite a few cool little things. Next up here, we have Repackage, a new 7 mana spell, and it's kind of Psychic Scream. It stuffs all minions into a 2-cost box, then shuffles that box into the opponent's deck. You can see there the repackaged box that allows you to add the resealed minions to your hand. So this is just a fantastic board clear again. At 7 mana for Priest. You know, Priest likes to have these big kind of universal board clears. Now, notably, this is actually a little worse than Psychic Scream if you look closely, because Psychic Scream would shuffle all of the minions into your opponent's deck. I'm trying to pull up Psychic Scream to show you guys the difference here, if you'll forgive me. Which means they had many potential dead draws, right? Like this, shuffle all minions into your opponent's deck. You know, if there's 10 minions, they have 10 dead draws in their deck, which, you know, very occasionally could help them in a fatigue scenario. But you liked it because you were giving them so many dead draws of like bad little minions and tokens and stuff, sometimes by design. Whereas with the repackaged box, they're only getting 1 bad draw. So yeah, it's not as helpful to them in fatigue scenarios, but that's rarely ever relevant. Instead, you know, they're getting 1 bad draw and potentially generating a lot of cool resources in hand. Some of those they may like to actually replay. So I do think this comes with notably more risk than Psychic Scream, which, you know, Psychic Scream is one of the best removal cards ever. So it's not necessarily a problem that this looks a little bit worse than Psychic Scream. Like that's, you know, this could still be very good. But I will say Psychic Scream's also, it's like a 5-year-old card or something, right? You know, it's, cards these days do typically eclipse older cards and should often keep up with the power level of older cards. So there's a little bit of a concern there. That said, I actually think this will still get played. I think it's still pretty good. It's Psychic Scream's better, but this is still really nice. Moving on to Purifying Power. There's some memes here about Unicorn Priest and Purify, and I don't know. 2-mana Holy Spell. Silence all friendly minions, then give them +1/+2, which, I don't know. This card's, it's kind of a token priest play, which we have seen, like the little lightning bug cards. I forget the actual name of that, but where you summon all the 1/1s, and we always said, hey, priest doesn't have any follow-ups for like these token boards. What's this going to do? This is kind of a follow-up for a token board. I don't think it's much at 1/2. You don't care about the silence in that case. That's totally fine. There is a cool play against like a frozen board here. If your opponent like blizzards your board, you can remove all of the freezes and then attack them with extra damage, which is really a fun punish, but not a reason to run a card necessarily. I doubt that's something we see. But anyway, a neat little meme and a neat little idea here. Will most decks be able to use this successfully, though? I doubt it. Priest just doesn't go wide enough, often enough for this to actually be worth it. You could maybe see this as a finisher in a double turn deck with our dragons, and like you use this as a way to get a bunch of cheap damage on a board you've built the same turn you played Zarima. Is that his name? Zarimi. The same turn you play Zarimi, you can follow up the next turn with Purifying Power or whatever on your extra turn and use that for lethal. But I don't know, that doesn't really seem worth it to me. That deck's probably gonna need too many other things to make space for this. So in other words, I don't know, kind of a clunky card. Probably not really the best for Priest, but it is a cool tool to generate sometimes, to discover sometimes. So I like that it does exist. So next up here is Chalk Artist, a 4-mana 4/3 Battlecry draw minion. Transform it into a random legendary one, keeping its original stats and cost. Which, man, that's really hard to assess, because sometimes that could be great. You could have a big effect on a small card. You get a Ragnaros as a classic example on a 1/1. And you don't care that it's a 1/1 because you're getting that free 8 damage or whatever, and you're like, yes, awesome, I got a Ragnaros. But there's so many other instances where you could get a card that needs stats, like the new King Crush or whatever, and it's a 1/1, and you're like, oh, this sucks. This needs to be bigger. The stats were an important part of this card, so this is going to be super inconsistent. And there are potentially some high rolls if you're running like a low cost package, but I don't know, man. I don't really see the reason to run this. I think it's just gonna whiff too often, and playing the 4-mana 4/3 kind of sucks. Like, yes, there's some draw baked into this, but not really, because you're not actually drawing your cards, you're drawing random stuff. So ultimately, I don't know, I just don't think this card gets there. It looks pretty fun, looks really cool. I'm excited to play it, but just not competitively aligned. So now let's do some quick reviews. Timewinder's Zarimi is a 5-star card. Scale Replica is a 4-star card. Clay Matriarch is a 3-star card. Fly Off the Shelves is a 4-star card. Raza the Resealed is a 4-star card. Papercraft Angel is a 4-star card. Careless Crafter is a 4-star card. Repackage is a 4-star card. Purifying Power is a 2-star card. Chalk Artist is a 1-star card. And there you go, man. Pretty insanely powerful set for Priest. I think there's some craziness here. I actually thought about giving Raza 5 stars as well. I think it's probably just going to demand a little bit too much setup to feel that crazy, but nonetheless, it's a potentially awesome set for Priest. Pretty cool stuff, pretty crazy stuff. So curious to your thoughts on this below. Is this indeed broken and OP or not? Share those thoughts. Thanks much, Alois, for watching, and until next time, game on.